So it's no secret, a lot of people are wanting to buy the Nintendo Switch right now. It's a really nice system, whether you're wanting to play games on the go or use it in the dock like a traditional console. But now that I've had mine for a little while, I thought I'd just give you a few things to consider before buying your first Nintendo Switch. Just a quick glance on eBay, you'll see a ton of overpriced Switches that people are trying to make money off of, and the reason being is they're pretty much sold out everywhere. It seems like I see the Switch at Walmart one day and then all of a sudden they're out of stock everywhere, and then it's usually a while before I see them again. But before you go out and pay top dollar, or if you plan on buying a Nintendo Switch for someone for Christmas or maybe it's their birthday coming up, in this video I want to give you 5 reasons of why you shouldn't buy the Nintendo Switch just yet. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, let's say you currently have a PS4 or Xbox One, and you're thinking it's going to be very similar in performance to those. Well, I would think again. I have the so-called less powerful version of the Xbox One S, and when you play the same game on both consoles, yeah, it's pretty noticeable that the Switch feels slower and somewhat laggy compared to the Xbox One S. I can only imagine how much slower it feels compared to something like the Xbox One X. But for me, I was really surprised how much worse it feels to play games like Rocket League on the Switch versus the Xbox One S. Now let's say you're only getting the Switch to play games like Mario and Zelda or some of the other exclusive Nintendo games, then you probably won't even notice this because, well, you can't play Mario on the Xbox or PS4. So in that case, yeah, it's probably not gonna matter. Another reason that is somewhat in line with performance, and that is the graphics or resolution of games on the Switch compared to that on an Xbox One S or PS4. And at first I didn't think it was a big deal, but the more I play cross-platform games on the Switch, the more I notice how bad the resolution looks. And maybe it's just because I'm playing on a 75-inch 4K TV. And I'll admit, I play the Switch probably more in docked mode than handheld mode, mainly because I think the screen on the Switch is a little too small, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. But it's just something that I like to point out. Besides the gameplay being more choppy than on an Xbox, it just reminds me of when I'm trying to stream a video on my phone and the internet connection is bad, so everything looks really low resolution because of buffering. Again, I don't think this is a deal breaker for most people, but just something you may want to consider before buying. The next reason is something I realized when testing out several Pro controllers on the Switch recently, and that is the controller is not as comfortable to hold as the Xbox controller. You'll hear a lot of people say how they think the PS4 is a better system than the Xbox One S and One X, but the reason is because they like the exclusive games on PS4 versus the exclusive games on Xbox One. But as what you don't hear as much is why the Xbox One controller is the best controller of this generation. Maybe all generations so far. I'll admit it was a little weird when I switched from my PS3 to the Xbox One S controller, but now that I've been using it for a while, yeah, I can't go back to the smaller PS3 controller. It's just not as comfortable. I mean, I even like the Wii Pro Controller and Wii U Pro Controller better than the Switch Pro Controller. Now there are ways to connect the Xbox One controller to the Switch with an adapter, which I also did a video on, but it's still not as good as using it on the Xbox One S. The next reason why you shouldn't buy the Nintendo Switch just yet is the game selection is less than what you're going to get on the Xbox One or PS4. Sure, Nintendo has their online game store now where some of the free games are decent, but there's so many no-name games that I haven't heard of, and it sort of reminds me of Netflix where it takes forever to find something good. Now if you want to play old NES or SNES games, that selection is actually pretty decent, but if you're paying each month or yearly to have online access, to me the selection is pretty weak for free games you get to play compared to the competition. If you look at Xbox Game Pass, or even Xbox Live Gold, I actually like the games you get on there a little bit better. Now that Xbox has their Game Pass on a ton of mobile devices, it makes it that much more enticing to choose the Xbox platform. Play some of those AAA games on. You should also notice that a lot of games that can play on Xbox One and PS4 unfortunately aren't able to run on the Nintendo Switch, which is another reason why there's just not as many good games on the Switch versus the PS4 and Xbox. Sure, you have to pay a little bit more on the Xbox with Game Pass to get that access, but in this case, like they say, you get what you pay for. Now maybe the reasons so far aren't really enough to bother you. Well, one thing you may want to consider with the new PS5 and Xbox Series S and X coming out in about a month or so is with the current generation of Switch already being behind in graphics and performance, it will be even further behind the competition once those come out. Which is why there's already rumors swirling about a new, more powerful Switch coming out in early 2021. No one actually knows if it's going to be an official Pro version of the Switch or what the specs will be, but I've already seen several reports and videos online about Nintendo telling their developers to create games that can support 4K resolution, which to me is a really good thing to hear. So if I didn't already buy my Switch, I definitely would have waited for this new and improved version coming next year, especially since I can already play a lot of the Mario and Zelda games on my Wii U. So if you've made it this far into the video, you may want to say thanks by subscribing, and don't forget to give a thumbs up if this video was helpful. This is Brian from Fishbee Productions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.